Hi, nice to meet you. I'm Ariana, as was said. Nice to meet you. I just watched episode 7.
Oh wow, okay, great. Yeah.
Yes. I was like, wait, is this the finale? Because you know how sometimes shows will be like, episode 7 will be just extra long and dramatic because so much happened.
So much. It's a giant episode. I feel like it's like 6 episodes in one.
Yes, yes, yes. So, how was it like filming that battle?
It was hard. It was a massive, massive amount of night shoots. I think we did almost 3 weeks total of night shoots on kind of or evening into night because some of those initial kind of battles at the kind of the gap or whatever you want to call it were in the evening. So we definitely worked hard. But it was a blast, and I think it was so totally worth it. I think it's a beautiful episode.
Yes. And also, I feel like you have some of your best like dialogue and speeches.
Yeah, I get to really do quite a bit in episode 7, so I'm happy it's out. I'm happy people are getting to see it. I mean, I don't know. I'm getting to give that little speech to a bunch of background artists and extras and a few other actors. It's sort of what an actor dreams of. So I had a blast. I'm so thankful to be able to have done it.
Yeah. Well, why do you think Maxim kind of turns around? Because he goes into it like we're not going to win. And then with his
Yeah.
motivational speech, that's like, oh, that's our greatest asset is like we're losers.
Well, I still don't know that he thinks they're going to win at that point. I think it's more of this he's been a little down in the dumps. I mean, that's not the complete way of putting it. I mean, he's been grieving for the entire season, and so he gets to the, he's sort of made up with Alanna at that point in episode 7. But I still think, it's a bunch of Trollocs and dark friends, and things don't look good for them. And so I think it's more of like, I think that speech for him in his head is a lot of like, if we're gonna go down, we might as well go down fighting, and we might as well do it as be heroes as best we can. And so I think that's where it's coming from him. And he's felt pretty terrible about himself the entire season. And so I think when he sees that reflected back at him, when he sees their fear and they're feeling like they aren't enough, he kind of snaps out of it a little bit and is like, no, you are enough. You just have to do the best you can and for as long as you can, and hopefully it'll be enough.
Yes. How was it like playing a grieving character for all of this season? Kind of a down in the dumps version of him.
Yeah, it's difficult playing grief, I think, as an actor, because you don't want to fall into this pattern of making the character so sad that they're not interesting, that they're kind of just stuck. Because that can happen. And I think in my life, anytime I've had, bad things happen, I've been grieving for a while, it's sort of this dance that you're playing with yourself where you desperately want to get out of feeling this way, but you can't for some reason. And so it's this push and pull of like trying and then getting pulled back in and trying and then getting pulled back in. But it definitely led to a lot of days of sad music in between takes and just, you know, kind of emotional exhaustion. The fight scenes are hard, but after you get home at night and you film one of those scenes where you're kind of crying or fighting or just like tearing at each other, that's when you sort of just want to lay on the couch and not do anything.
Yeah. What were some of the sad music you were listening to?
I listen to a lot of like bluegrass and acoustic. I went to school with this guy called his name is Josiah Lemming. I grew up in Tennessee,
Mhm.
and East Tennessee, so a lot of like old school country. But he had this EP that he came out with while we were filming the season, and it really, I don't know, there's something about it that spoke to me about where Maxim was. And so I don't know that anyone ever really knows who he is, but his name's Josiah Lemming, and his music's beautiful. And I listen to it kind of on repeat the entire entire kind of middle part of the season when Maxim was sad, and it helped, it helped to be reflective and sort of in this kind of space of just feeling sad.
Yes. Speaking of Tennessee, I randomly saw a post today actually that they were talking about in fantasy worlds, no one can be American. Everyone has to
Yeah.
be from like New Zealand or Ireland or Australia and have these types of accents. So this is a two-part question.
Yeah.
Being from Tennessee, did you ever imagine being in like a fantasy show? And two, how did you get your accent down?
Uh, no, I did not imagine being in a fantasy show. I think it was the furthest thing that when I went to drama school that I was like that I will never be asked to do something like that. And so it was such a surprise to kind of be a part of it. And then I was lucky enough, or just happened to, I went to drama school in the UK. So I studied here for about 3 years. And so it helped me develop an accent that is it's pretty okay, I think. I think does the job.
It does. It does. That's funny. But also speaking of grieving, were you worried when reading the script that he was going, since he was going to be sad a lot of the season, that in life, but also probably in television, that when someone's grieving, even as a friend, or a loved one, that there is sadly kind of like, let's say a friend is going through a breakup, that sometimes
Yeah.
you like you give them like 3 months and then you're just like, okay, we got to get
Yeah.
over this. Were you worried that the
Yeah.
audience was just going to be like, hey, Max, like I know
Yeah.
you're
No, I
sad,
mean,
but
yeah, God. Yeah. Yeah. No, the show, the show has such a big cast. And so it's such an interesting thing because, really, truly, I think there's him in episode two, but you don't really see, there's like, he's angry in episode two, but there's really like three scenes where he's like grieving.
Mhm.
Which doesn't feel like very much when I just talk to you about it. I'm like, oh, it's only three scenes, or he's really sad. But, he has other scenes during that period where he's sort of managing it. Um, but spread across 8 episodes, that starts to feel like a long time. And so you are trying to find ways, there were a couple moments, couple pops of like bringing him out of it, like when they're talking about the Baker Boy in episode 5 and like his, trying to bring those elements in of like he's still a person with a life and trying to move on. But yeah, no, it can be difficult to be around someone who's grieving, which is I think what makes grief so difficult, so hard, because ultimately someone can only be there so much for you. And I think that's where Alanna and he are really having a rift this season, is that she is she's grieving in her own way, but her version of grieving is like getting to work. I feel like there are those people who, when something bad happens to them, they dive into whatever they're working on and they just sort of put blinders on. And then maybe 6 months, 2 years, however long down the line, they may have a breakdown. But I think Maxim's the opposite, obviously. He's gonna feel it very hard at the beginning, and then once he works through it, I think he's worked through it fairly successfully. So we'll actually see, I think, maybe in future seasons, um, whether Alanna kind of compartmentalizing her grief will come back to bite her, if you if you want to put it that way.
it always comes up eventually.
Yeah, it does. It does. You can only hide from it for so long. You do have to deal with it.
Yes. I know there are so many interviews, and it's great, about the polyamorous
Yeah.
relationship and the bisexuality, which is great.
Yeah.
Representation is great, obviously. Um, but also, do you sometimes feel a burden since there's only so much of it on television that you're just like, I wish there was more so other people could also talk about it, and that this isn't
Yeah.
a bit of a norm, that there's different relationships, there's such a
Yeah.
spectrum of sexuality.
Oh, I definitely think, I think that's the beauty of our show, but I think I wish it kind of bled into other forms of media and other shows, in that, you know, there are so many different versions of how people love, and we're only just sort of now coming around to this idea of it's not just, coming past just heteronormative relationships to maybe, monogamous sort of queer relationships are okay. And now we're sort of scratching the surface. And the difference between how much is accepted now and talking about now versus when we started in 2019, it's actually quite a lot. You know, I've gotten a lot of questions from people asking me like, how did you research this? And honestly, I had to like go online and not in the first season, there's not a ton about them being polyamorous. It just sort of said they're polyamorous.
Mhm.
But we had to talk about it ourselves a lot in terms of how to build it because there are obviously polyamorous couples and there've been polyamorous couples for forever, but it wasn't like I couldn't talk to, like, it wasn't like I was like calling up a friend who I knew who was in a polyamorous relationship and be like, hey, tell me about how this went for you.
Yeah.
But that's actually probably that's changed. I do know people who've been in polyamorous relationships now that we're 6 years down the line. And so I think ultimately you have to have the first wave and the first trickle of these things, and we're definitely seeing that. And you saw it in the past, and hopefully it will continue. But I will say I didn't expect to kind of be the face of bisexual polyamory when I started acting. It wasn't in like the mood board, the whatever that my plan was. But I'm happy to do it.
Yes. Does it feel like a burden or a burden and a blessing or a blessing? Like how do you take it in?
It doesn't feel like a burden. It feels like such an interesting talking point and an interesting kind of way to explore this group of people. So it doesn't feel like a burden. And it's given me insight into my own relationships and into ultimately what I do think is true and what we as a trio kind of came up with, and what I do think you do see on the show is that ultimately these relationships succeed or fail on the same principles that other relationships succeed or fail, which is communication and honesty and making sure that everyone knows what the expectations are and what everyone's needs are. And so they're not all that different, like in terms of that. It's just however many people and what the makeup is and what makes everyone in the relationship happy. But yeah, I wouldn't say it's a burden, but it is also, it's a cool thing to be able to represent.
Yes, yes. And I also love how it's not just about sexuality, like how
Yeah.
sometimes if it's brought up on the show, it's just like, oh, this sexy night. It's just like, no, this is an actual real relationship with feelings
Yeah.
and anything that comes in the relationship. So
Yeah.
I love that
Yeah.
as well.
I think the couple times that I've seen polyamorous relationships or three, and I've said this in a couple interviews or that sort of thing, it's always presented as just kind of a sexual thing. It's like, oh, look, they're cool, they're adventurous. And then it's kind of just that. You don't talk about what their actual relationship is like. So I like that we do that on the
Yeah.
show because it really speaks to what that experience is like for people.
Yes. You have such a huge fan base on the show. Do you try to keep the social media and the fan reaction to it all separate, or do you like to dive into it?
I like to dive into it. Some people don't like to do anything. I sort of take on this approach of just like more is more, and when an avalanche comes in, and it's easier to kind of get a sense of like if you just it's like an ocean. You just let it all wash over you, and then it doesn't really matter. You can't keep the ocean out. People love it, people hate it, people are indifferent, people are all feel all sorts of things about all of the characters on the show, and that isn't kind of the experience that people have reading the books too. People definitely with that book series, everyone has a different favorite character, and so it can be hard sometimes when you read people be saying like, I don't care about this storyline at all. It's so boring, and you're like, but we worked so hard on it. But at the same time, you also have, your fans who are like, this is the most meaningful storyline to me. It's so funny. It's so exciting. It's so touching. And that's how it was in the books for all the characters too. And so, you just have to kind of roll with it. And then it means we're doing something right because we're just trying to adapt these books.
Yes. In your Instagram bio, you said you're 30-ish on the outside and 80-ish on the inside. What does that mean to you?
That means that I go to bed really early. I have very little energy to party at all. My friends will tell you that I'm often the first to leave a club or a bar, even if I go at all. And so I really love like one-on-one conversations or like small group things, but if I get around a bunch of people in social settings, it's overwhelming for me. So I like to keep it simple and kind of grandpa, grandma, if you you know.
I read that and I'm like, I feel seen. I'm
Yeah,
also
yeah.
curious
I
on the
I feel like there's a
outside.
lot of people out there who just sort of like, who cozy night in and then maybe a chat over a glass of wine or, one cocktail and that's a big night for them. That's a huge night for me.
Yes.
Yeah.
But I'm like, I'm done. I love playing with kids. And I'm also
Yeah.
like, I also like their bedtimes. I'm like,
Yeah,
wow, that
yeah,
that 9 o'clock
yeah.
is classic.
Nine, yeah, 9 o'clock. I don't necessarily have to wake up very early, but like a 9 to 7 sort of 9 p.m. to 7 a.m. sort of sleep situation, just get a lot of Z's is good for me. Yeah.
Yes. And the one-on-one conversations. I can't play a room. I can't do it.
Yeah. I find it to be I just find it when there's a lot of people in a room talking, I find it to be so overstimulating that I can't concentrate on one single thing. And so it makes it to where, because I'm hearing this conversation, I'm hearing that conversation, I'm trying to have a conversation with a couple people in front of me. And it just is, I just find my mind can't deal with it.
Awesome. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me. This was amazing and one-on-one, which I love.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. It's perfect.
So I cannot wait to talk to you about this and future projects. This was awesome.
Great. I would love that. Yeah, lovely to meet you.
Okay, I will talk to you soon. Thank you.
Okay, bye.
Okay, bye.